Hello, welcome to the Sky Accountants podcast. I'm Ashley Carmichael, and I have with me today the CEO of Sky Accountants, Jamie Johns.
Yeah, g'day, Ash. Thanks for having us on another podcast and another episode today.
Glad to have you here. And big week in politics,
Yeah.
budget week. Dr. Jim Chalmers, Federal Treasurer, handed down the 23/24 year budget.
Something that us accountants love to wait for every year. Is that right, Ash?
Yeah, it's a bit like Santa Claus coming. What's he got in his sack? Yes. Well, look, we're not the only ones. I think everyone, is keen to know who the winners and losers are.
Yeah, that's right.
But look, an interesting budget. We've got a surplus for 22, 23.
Yeah. First time 15 years, is it?
Yes, yeah. So that's a good outcome. It's sort of, and I think Jim Chalmers has been pretty upfront about this. It's, a few things have gone their way.
What's the reason behind the surplus, Ash, do you think?
Look, there's a few different reasons. Like there's, in that period, there's been a bit of a surge in like company profits and therefore the tax that flows into the government from it. Commodity prices have been high. Inflation has done it. Prices go up, then that results in more tax. High employment levels. There's a number of factors that have all sort of gone the government's way and produced this budget. But it's kind of short-lived. So, we're expecting a deficit again in 23/24, about $14 billion.
Really?
It's going to blow out even further to about 35 bill the year after. So it's nice to have a surplus, but we probably need to be, as Chalmers has said, trying to hold a bit of it back and not getting too carried away with spending.
Well, we don't want to, it's all tied around inflation too, isn't it? We don't want to have the government spending copious amounts of money and, filling the economy with surplus cash only to put prices up again. That's probably been the balance that that difficult balance, Ash, that they've tried to reach this time.
Yeah, that's right. They've had a pretty unenviable task. There's a lot of people screaming about the cost of living, and we've had the march of interest rate rises, and things out there have become tight for some pockets, and they're keen to try and help with that, but they've got to be careful how they do it because the cure might be worse than the disease. Like you said, if they spend up big, they'll just exacerbate that inflation problem.
Just on that, Ash, the word inflation is thrown around a fair bit, but what does actually inflation really mean? I know for us who are exposed to the, what do they call it, the CPI or the Consumer Price Index, that's really a basket of goods and services, isn't it, that measures the prices of things across the board.
Yeah, look, it's all it is. It's about the buying power of a dollar. What can you buy? And so inflation is essentially a setting where what you can buy for that dollar is reducing.
It's reducing.
Essentially prices are going up. And so it's problematic because people are earning, in very simplistic terms, people are earning the same amount, but what they can buy with their earnings is reducing.
Is less, and obviously, like it's probably most countries' biggest enemy, isn't it? Like in inflation. So
and look, the Reserve Bank are really anti-inflation. There's a bit of debate about whether or not they're too focused on reining in inflation.
Yeah.
But the rationale there is that to rectify that erosion of buying power, people have to earn more money, and so they get pay increases, and then they spend more, and you get locked into a spiral. And next thing you know, you're Argentina with a barrel full of, a wheelbarrow full of dollars to go and buy milk.
That's right. Yeah.
It's all very simplistic explanation, but I'm
Yeah.
sure people get the drift.
But I mean, look, I was watching the news last night, and the economist on there was saying that, the government's almost would like unemployment to go back up a little bit, because at the moment we've got like full employment now, participation rates high. In other words, everyone's got jobs. Everyone's got jobs.
That's right. And look, that's one of the things that's been sort of noted in the budget, is that the unemployment rate is historically very low, and it's projected to remain low.
Yeah.
It will rise a little bit in the 23/24 year to, I think they're saying 4.25%, and then up a 0.25% to 4.5 in 24/25.
Okay.
It's still very low.
It's still low, and we're still looking to bring in, isn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong, 400,000 odd to 600,000 immigrants in the next 12 months as well. So, all those people, a lot of those people, I guess, will have to have jobs as well, and they'll have to have somewhere to live. So there is a unique set of circumstances that the economy's facing at the moment.
Yeah, look, I certainly wouldn't want the job of trying to coordinate and manage all of that at a government level. But look, inflation, they are forecasting that to start to come back. It's going to remain high. But, I think they're saying it's about 6% now. They want to get it back to about 3.25% in the next 12 months. We'll see. Like, politicians, they like to claim the glory when things turn out as they said they would, but when they don't, they would like to blame it on outside forces.
They always distance themselves from it, and it's funny. I think we've had 11 consecutive interest rate rises, haven't we? So,
So, and that's a real sort of thorn in the side, because we've got really high debt levels at the moment too. So, that level of debt is, both at household level and government level. That's an issue that's got to be managed moving forwards, and that's another part of the reason why they can't sort of splash the cash around in the budget. And we're just, we're also, I'm sure everyone's starting to see signs of it now. We're expecting growth to slow right down. So I think real GDP growth is expected to be 1.5% in this coming year. And then it'll bounce back up to 2.25% the year after. But those are still pretty, in terms of what we're used to seeing, those are pretty low numbers.
That's right. Yeah. So it's interesting, like we said earlier, like the balance to get this right with the current budget's been really, fairly tricky. And I think some of the things I read in the budget, there was a lot of, would you say, welfare measures if we sort of drill down into a bit further with this current budget, Ash?
Yeah, that's right. So, for you and I, Jamie, who are accountants, we're always looking at, what are they doing with super, and what are they doing with tax and all that kind of stuff. And look, that's really not been the focus at all
in this budget.
There's really been a focus around this sort of cost of living issue, which hits home hardest for those on lower incomes. And so we're seeing a lot of sort of, social security, whatever label you want to put on it. We're seeing things like an increase in the job seeker allowance for unemployed, single parent payments, rent assistance. There's, an extension of the higher earnings that age pensioners can
Oh,
receive before their pension starts to reduce.
yeah.
There's stuff in there about in sort of cheapening medical costs through the
Oh, yeah.
Medicare bulk billing concessions.
Much in there about aged care in terms of like.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit in that space. Aged care is an important industry,
It's massive.
and it's sort of been said that it employs some of the lowest paid workers doing some of the most important work.
Oh, yeah. They had a pay rise in that sector.
Yeah, so the Fair Work Commission's put through a 15% increase to the minimum award wages, which comes in from July, I believe.
Right.
And the government's putting up funding to help support that. So that's hopefully a good thing for that industry. But we're seeing they're putting some more funding in for home care support packages for people. So that's trying to support people to continue living in their own homes and keep take the pressure off aged care through that. And we're also seeing, they're talking about they're putting some funding towards trying to get more or a bigger childcare workforce.
Right. And how are they doing that, Ash? More incentive with?
Look, I won't claim to be an expert on it, but there's a bit of money in there to try and attract people to the profession and make it easier to sort of get the qualifications that are needed.
There was a lot of talk on the budget too about just taking the pressure off the hospital systems, but I think a lot of that came through just funding in general.
Yeah, so and a lot of this is just funding type measures, just allocating more money to do more.
I noticed the bulk billing with doctors, for example, they were increasing that so that your average person wasn't out of pocket with the gap in terms of bulk billing. So it seems to be a lot of welfare measures that you're mentioning in this budget. On the tax front, Ash, was there much really that affects, say, our clients, small business people, do you think?
No, there wasn't really a whole lot at all. And there's sort of, some more technical things that your average person or your average business owner really not going to be that interested in. They don't really benefit or win from it at all. It's just behind the scenes stuff. And look, a lot of things had already been announced, and that's one of the things about these budgets is that they've made announcements about a number of the items that are included here before they handed down the budget. So one that people would have heard a bit about is the extra tax for large super balances. So this is the one where if you've got more than $3 million in your super account, you pay some more tax.
Oh, yeah.
And that's been floating around for some time now, but it's still been made part of the budget. So
does that get royal assent then? Has that been passed or?
Oh no, it's a long way from that. It's still, I think, undergoing consultation.
Yeah.
And look, that one in particular doesn't affect that many people, but there's some concerns around aspects of it, and look, there's always genuine concerns around tinkering in the super system. It's such a long-term investment, and people want to, if they're going to put their hard-earned in there for their future, they want to know that the rules of the game are not going to be changed on them and leave them worse off.
They want certainty.
And so, that sort of has rattled some people.
I was just going to say, with talking about super, I heard at work the other day that the government's looking to bring in, I think you call it, payday superannuation. Do you want to?
Yeah, that's right. And so this is yet another one of the measures that's in the budget, but that
It
was
is.
announced pre. And so this is the concept. So at the moment, employers are required to pay super on behalf of employees, and under the super guarantee legislation, it needs to be paid quarterly. And super's a perennial issue because there are some out there that pay late or that don't pay at all, and the employees sort of miss out on what they should be getting. But it's hard for the government to kind of police. And so what they're talking about, I believe it's from 2026. They're bringing in a requirement that superannuation will be paid on payday along with wages. What people will be entitled to won't be changing. That's not what the measure's about, but it's about the timing of when it gets paid.
You basically have to pay the super when you do the payroll.
Correct. Yeah. Which may have some advantages. But given where we're at and what we're used to doing, there will be some real and genuine cash flow issues that businesses will need to manage around that.
I think so too.
But we'll have to sort of see a bit more detail. Look, one thing that at this point we should mention about the budget process is that the government puts forward all of these ideas, but the detail is never there. Like, it's always just a very high level summary of what they're proposing. The detail comes later, and then sometimes much later. And so it's a bit hard because people are often thinking, well, is there any action I should be taking right now? And it's hard to advise them because the devil's in the detail and we don't have it.
Just on that, Ash, does the superannuation guarantee rate change again on the 1st of July coming?
It does. And look, that's not part of this budget. That was just happening anyway. So the super rates this year is at 10.5%. It goes up to 11%.
Goes to 11. And then what's the plan over the next 2 years then? It's going to go up.
There's I'd have to look it up, but it does continue to increase year on year for a few more years.
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah. One of the other things as well that's been really spoken a lot about in the measure is the stage 3 tax cuts that the previous government introduced. Like, that's all legislated. That's happening. That's sort of set in stone. But there's been a lot of talk about rolling that back. And to do that, the government would actually have to introduce new legislation to change those tax rates. And there's been a lot of speculation about whether or not they should do that.
Were they individual tax cuts there, Ash?
Yeah, personal tax cuts. The government have said on many occasions that they're not going to be touching those. It was something that they said in the election campaign. And so I think they've been really reticent to touch that one.
When were they to come in though?
Again, I'm a bit light on the detail here, but it's sort of not, again, it's not part of this budget. It's just, they're coming. It's not this year. I think it's. I can look it up quickly and tell you. How does that sound?
I'll keep you talking in the process. The other thing on that is, we've had this instant asset write-off, haven't we?
Yeah. So just on that, they come in 24/25, so a few years away.
20, with those tax cuts.
Yeah. So instant asset write-off. So this has moved around so much over the last 5 years or so.
Well, I was thinking for any of our clients right now leading up to 30th of June.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of people will be aware that, so we've got what they call the temporary full expensing, which was a COVID measure, which was basically for businesses with less than 50 mil turnover.
Yeah.
If they invested in assets for their business, they could claim a full tax deduction in the year they buy that item. Unlimited.
Unlimited.
Yeah. And so there are businesses out there that are looking to make use of that. It was extended to the 30th of June 23.
Right.
So in a month or so's time, that runs out. And then we just revert back to what's in the Tax Act, and that is that you can only write off an asset if it costs you less than $1,000.
That's what it has been. It had been for quite some years.
It had always been in the legislation the whole way through, but there was just, we would get a piece of temporary legislation that said that limit would increase to 20, and at one point it was 25, and it might have been 30. Like, it would change that many times. And then we had this overlay of the temporary full expensing, which had the same impact, but it was different piece of legislation. But so that expires, and from the 1st of July, it's gone. But so what they have done, though, is they've put in another temporary, another temporary write-off increase with a limit of 20,000.
And when does that 20,000 apply? Is that
so that's next financial year?
Oh yeah, 23, 24. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So there's that one, and the other one that they're looking at is what they're calling energy efficiency.
Oh yeah.
So they're going to give eligible businesses a extra 20% tax deduction for investments in assets that improve energy efficiency.
I wonder how they determine that. There must be a list of
look, there'll be criteria in due course, like very specific, I'd imagine.
That's right.
But essentially, so it'll be capped at investments of up to 100K.
Right.
So if you were to spend the whole 100K, you would get a $20,000 tax benefit.
Okay.
So an extra 20% deduction of that 100,000.
Oh, extra.
So say I've got a supermarket, for the sake of argument, and I've got some freezers and refrigerators in my supermarket that are pretty old and not that great. I might go out and invest in some upgrades that are more energy efficient, that might qualify for this and get a tax benefit. So what they're trying to do is incentivize smaller businesses in the smaller end of town to invest in more energy efficient.
And is that next year, Ash, starting next year, next financial year?
Yeah, I believe so. I'll just double check the start date on that one.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be of use to every business. On some businesses, they just don't have that sort of equipment. But there are certainly a lot of businesses that could benefit from it. Yeah. So it'll run from July this year through to June 24.
24, yeah. I think one of the key things here was if I'm a small business person, is particularly that point around that unlimited asset write-off. That's that could, depending on what you're looking to invest in at the moment or what you're going to do pre-30th of June, it's something you'd want to take advantage of, I reckon, depending on your circumstances.
It's definitely worth considering. We always say the same thing. Never do anything just to get a tax deduction.
No, that's right.
If you buy something that you don't want or need,
you
might save 25% on your company tax.
Yeah, but
you've just spent 75 cents buying something that you don't need or want.
yeah.
So
it's a classic question when when you're accountant advising clients. Yeah, you might save 25 cents, but you don't want to spend the other 75 cents for no reason.
But if there's a good business case, you need
Yeah.
some new equipment for your business.
Absolutely.
It's a good time to do it.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's a good point message to take away there. Is there any other things that from a practical sense for people to be aware in the budget? It's probably some of the fine detail around compliance.
Look, there's stuff in there, like there's this new global and domestic minimum tax rate concept that they're looking at for multinationals, but that's a bit above my pay grade. I don't know about you, Jamie, but we don't really deal in that space. But what that's about, and it's comes out of the OECD, and it's just about trying to make sure that multinationals pay their fair share of tax in the jurisdictions they operate. Arguably, this area has not been one where the government or former governments have had a lot of success. But it goes towards tax revenues.
It reminds me, was it a few years ago they were trying to bring in the mining tax, and I think that was
but it sort of then segues into some of the other things there, so that that part of the budget, they provide funding to the Australian Taxation Office to undertake initiatives, and there are a couple of initiatives that are going at the moment, and they've been given funding to extend them, and they're really focused around compliance. So small business compliance is one. There's personal tax compliance, and GST compliance is another. So, reading between the lines, the experience is that they've had some success in collecting tax dollars that would have otherwise gone missing. And so they think it's a good investment, and they'll keep working in that space. And so what I would say there is, the message there for people, they love people with investment properties, for example. If that's you, just for the love of God, make sure that you've got your paperwork in order, and you're not claiming things that you shouldn't be, because they're continuing to resource the ATO to catch out people who are making mistakes or intentionally doing the wrong thing. Same in the small business space, same in GST. And they're really trying to rope it in. Like there's this part of the Tax Act called Part 4A, which is, in sort of technical speak, general anti-avoidance provisions. Look, without boring people too much, what it's about is trying to unwind arrangements that are just purely tax motivated schemes
set up to avoid tax.
And so there's some funding and measures there in the budget to sort of expand the scope of that part of the Tax Act as well. So that they do want to sort of rein in people who are getting into sort of elaborate tax avoidance schemes.
Well, probably a good place to end this podcast, Ash, is on tonight we'll have the opposition's response to the budget. Peter,
that's right.
So any ideas what he might say?
Well, no, not really. Look, in many respects, it's traditionally we have on the Thursday after the budget, the leader of the opposition gives their reply. And that reply, well, they might put up their own ideas and that kind of stuff, but it's really hypothetical because they're not the government. But what we are focused on when we listen to that reply is really what measures they support and what they don't. what they're on the fence on and might want to negotiate with. Because when the government announces these changes in the budget, that doesn't mean that we're going to see them, that they'll ever see the light of day. We can go back and we see all this in our world, Jamie, of all these what they call announced but unenacted measures. So in previous budgets where they announce things and they're not legislated.
Well, it still doesn't become law, does it?
So, for example, people will remember there's the skills and training boost and the digital boost where we'd get those extra tax deductions for, undertaking training. That was announced by the Morrison government. Well, that legislation still hasn't passed Parliament, and we don't really know when or if it will. And so that announcement may never become a reality. So the government's task from here is to go along and legislate these announcements, and that's not an easy path. They have to get the legislation written, which takes time. They have to consult on it, and then they have to introduce the legislation and try their luck getting it through Parliament. And so it,
it's a long process.
Depends on the level of support. So, going back to that comment about Dutton, if the Liberal Party supports, just say hypothetically, the $20,000 small business write-off, then we can be fairly confident that that measure will go through Parliament. It'll become legislation. Hypothetically, if they oppose that, well, we probably want to be a little bit careful about preemptively acting on that before the legislation's out, because it might just get stuck and never go anywhere.
Yeah, that's right. So again, that's why it's important to call your accountant, and when you do make business decisions, not only if it makes good business case or good business sense, obviously that's something you need to consider, but you still want to know the tax ramifications, of course, Ash, as well. So, that's very good.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit of water to go under the bridge, and we will, as we always do, keep people updated about those measures that are of most interest. So through our regular blogs and this sort of thing. So we'll keep people posted.
That's right. Always call. If in doubt, call the office wherever you are, and the team will certainly be able to look after.
That's right. Or if there's something in there that you think might affect you or that interests you, but you want to know a little bit more about it, contact us.
Yes.
And we can get you up to speed with what's out there on that measure at the moment, and keep put you on the list to keep you updated as things progress.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, thanks for the update on the budget, Ash. We've probably covered a bit of ground, both at a really high level, but also just down to the ordinary everyday that it'll affect our clients. And if you've whether you're an individual taxpayer or whether you're a small business person as well. So if you're listening to this, thanks for joining us again, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next session.
Yeah, that's right. And look, my final word before we go, if you do want to have a look at the detail of the budget, get on over to our website, www.skyaccountants.com.au.
That's it.
Go to the blog. There is one there where you can go and download a fairly comprehensive guide that talks about all the different measures in the budget that we've been chatting about today. And give us a call if you need to know more. Yeah. All right. Thanks for that, Ash. And we look forward to talking about the next topic in the next Sky Accountants episode. Thank you. All right. See you, mate. Bye.